Single salute. I'm Lord Maitreya, the hip hop futurist. You're now tuned into the Super Longevity Institute podcast. This evening, I have a very special guest. Um, she's she started her career in 1979. She studied at the High School of Art and Design in Manhattan at the age of 15. Her career as an artist started to take off after the 1980s, following the Graffiti Art Success for America show, which invited graffiti artists to paint on the walls of the gallery. In 1983, she played the leading role in the film Wildstyle and was involved with a book entitled Subway Art by Martha Cooper and Henry Chalfant. Her studio painting often uses themes of New York City subway trains and pop surrealist cityscapes. Some of her pieces are in the collection of the Whitney Museum of American Art, the Metropolitan Museum of Art in Brooklyn, and Brooklyn Museum in New York City. And each year, she does a mural project with the students of Frank Sinatra School of the Arts in Astoria, Queens. Some of her famous paintings are the John Lennon piece, 1981, the Beatles piece, 1981, Welcome to Heaven in 1982, Pink 2007, located at the 5 Points, Lady Liberty 2016 in Queens, and the 9/11 tribute in 2001. Ladies and gentlemen, hip hop futurists, transhumanists worldwide, the first lady of graffiti, Lady Pink. Welcome to the Institute.
Thank you for having me.
Where are you originally from?
I'm originally from Ecuador. I migrated to this country when I was like 7 years old.
Wow.
So I am New York raised, and my allegiance is to America. I'm a U.S. citizen, but I did start off in Ecuador.
Wow. Such an amazing history. How old were you when you came to America? What?
I was 7 years old. My sister was 8. My mother decided to leave my father, have nothing to do with him, and she left the country altogether. Came to the U.S. with no papers, not speaking the language, 2 little girls in tow, and somehow she made it here, made a success, and raised us up proper.
Wow. Wow. Um I did see that you, and when you left, I think I read something, if I'm not mistaken, that you lived, and when you were in Ecuador, you lived in the Amazon.
My mother's family
Hmm.
has a plantation in the Amazon
Wow.
rainforest. So when my mom broke up with my father, she went back to the Amazon rainforest to her family with 2 little babies in tow, and she was trying to make a break from my real dad, who was an amazing guy, but he was a womanizer, a politician.
Mm,
He already had a wife and a couple of kids,
wow.
so he kept going back to his original wife. So my mom had
Mm,
had enough. She had that. She's like, that's it. I'm leaving the country, and
wow.
but so we came from one jungle to the concrete jungle,
Wow.
basically.
Where did you live when you first came to New York City?
I lived in Williamsburg, Brooklyn, which is now a hub for artists
Yeah.
and young people, and was completely transformed. When I lived there, it was just working class Polish people. Um,
Mm,
and,
wow.
and, and I encountered racism when I first came to this country. I had no idea that I wasn't white.
Mm,
In my country, I was white. I was not one of the
mm,
little brown natives. It was different. So I come to this country only to learn that I'm not white. And the
wow.
white kids tortured us when we were first put into Catholic school. So I
Wow.
would go home crying every day. I didn't understand what these kids were saying, but they were awfully mean. They did not care
Wow.
for myself and my sister being the only Latin kids in the entire Catholic school. What did we know about racism? And 2 years later, my mom put us in public school with lots of colored kids and Spanish speaking kids, and we fit in right well.
Wow. When all right, when you first got here, did you see any graffiti on the trains or anything? When you first got here, do you?
When I first got here, I don't think I took the trains very much.
Mm,
So my first encounter was when I was 12 years old on a public school trip to the Bronx Zoo. And the
mm,
trains go elevated. They go outdoors up in the Bronx there. So I got to see a beautiful train with trees and characters and letters. It was a top to bottom, end to end, apparently by Lee. I didn't know it at the time, but that's what I had seen. And I was captivated by this amazing thing. It had to be with permission. It was so beautifully executed that the trains had to be done this way. And I thought the transit authority were like really, really cool people for letting this happen.
Who was
I
Lee?
was 12.
Well, wow. Who was Lee? Tell my audience who was Lee.
Lee is considered one of the kings of graffiti. He did some of the biggest work and best work through the mid 70s until the around 1980, 81 was some of his last subway trains. And when I was 16 years old, I started dating him. He was about 20 years old. He had been just finishing up with his graffiti career on the underground, painting subway trains and all that dangerous stuff. And I was just starting out, and he wasn't having it, that his young girlfriend was going off into danger or doing something, deadly with a bunch of handsome young men. So he didn't want me to paint subway trains, but we were dating. He encouraged me to paint canvases and to do the legitimate world above ground, make money and do legal things rather than sneaking out at night and doing dangerous, crazy stuff like painting subway trains. He had done it. He'd been there. He knew how crazy dangerous that was. But for a teenage kid, I was 16, 17 years old. It was like way fun. It was really exciting and fun to do. And sure, the legal stuff was nice too. That was fun. That was entertaining. Got to meet all sorts of rich folks, go to clubs and rich people's houses and selling paintings for loads of money. And, there's lots of underage drinking and drugs and stuff going on. That was fun too. Don't get me wrong.
Yes,
but the
yes.
subway train, that's a different kind of excitement. That got
Yeah.
some kind of adrenaline thing going, or just knowing that you're sticking it to the man, or that you're getting over or accomplishing something that everyone says is impossible to do because I was a girl.
Yeah.
So I had to prove them wrong.
Wow. Did your parents know that you were sneaking out? Did they ever catch you and be like, "Where you going?"
Yes, I got caught sneaking back in a few times, and we lived in a private house. I had to jump out the window, and I shared the room with my sister, and I had to sneak out past her, jump out the window, and she caught me and ratted me out, and my mother would know that I snuck out and would be waiting for me in the dark, just waiting. She couldn't do anything but worry and wait, and then I'd try to sneak back into the house, and I'd get that in the dark. You wouldn't even see it coming. So she really didn't know how to handle me. I was an out of control teenager, and she was just hoping that whatever boyfriend I had or some man would take control of me and lead me, guide me in the right direction.
Your father was an architect, right?
My real father in Ecuador is an architectural engineer, and then became a senator, and then was imprisoned, get this one, for backing up the president. His name was El Presidente Loco. I don't know his real name, but he was a crazy man. He was voted out of office and didn't want to leave office, so he barricaded himself inside the presidential palace with his little army and about 17 senators backing him up. This is like just what happened this week.
Yeah, that's what
17 senators backing him up, and it didn't work out for them. The president was kicked out of office, and those 17 senators were put in jail. And they were in a cushy jail. It looked like a Spanish villa or something like that. And that's the last time I ever saw my father. I went to visit him in this jail, and saw him sharing a room with a bunch of other white collar criminals and such. And he did a few years in prison for backing up the president, for breaking the law and being an insurrectionist.
Yeah.
I mean, really. So this is exactly what had happened there. And then he was released to house arrest, and then he died of a heart attack.
Wow. I didn't even know that. Wow. This is some great. I'm loving this right now. We going back to the essence, people. I told you I was gonna go back to the essence. I don't know, man. We got to keep our history alive. What do I start? So you wanted to be? Did you want to follow in your father's footsteps with architecture?
Well, yes, I did. In the High School of Art and Design, and although it's a high school, you have to pick a major. and I chose the major of being an architect, doing architecture.
Wow.
I should have chosen animation. Those guys down the hall were laughing and having a good time and doing
Yeah,
cartoons and animation,
I
and
bet.
I was doing architecture, drafting and measurements and all
Mm,
these minute numbers, lots of numbers and
mm.
mathematics. And although I was good at it, I had a knack for architecture. And two of my brothers in Ecuador are architectural engineers
Oh,
now, and they
wow.
build big buildings and complexes and stuff like that. And
Wow.
I didn't have the patience for it at 16. I
Mm.
was too busy cutting school and going off to do graffiti and or acquiring paint, which is a five-finger discount action, going out and getting your supplies or scouting the train yards or all these activities that it entailed, doing graffiti, as well as going to gallery exhibits, traveling the world, going
Mm.
off to do live interviews with television. And my school was not sympathetic. They did not want to let me out the door to do these things. You needed a parent to come
Wow.
get you because you was underage and all
Mm.
that. And I was like, I had a life. So I would just walk out the door and go do my thing. I ended up not finishing high school. I bailed on my last year because I was booked up with exhibits and traveling and
Mm.
doing grown up stuff.
Right, right.
So I took my GED and I bailed from school.
Wow. Well, okay. Let me go back a little bit. What? All right. You wanted you signed up for architecture, but what made you want to become a graffiti artist? What made you? What brought you to be like, you know what? This is what I want to do. I want
Well,
to be.
it's a simple thing. I mean, I started at 15 when my very first boyfriend, who that I had from 13 to 15,
Hmm.
he was busted for doing graffiti, and they sent him to go live in Puerto Rico with family. So he was lost to me. At 15, he couldn't come back. I cried all over the middle school for at least a month. I cried for him and learned how to tag his name all over the middle school. And
Wow.
then his friends took me under their wing and taught me style because the graffiti letters are not random.
Yeah.
Everything is very specific to an era,
Hmm.
a space like Brooklyn. I learned Brooklyn style when I started.
Wow.
Um, so I learned how to tag up properly. But then it wasn't until I went to the High School of Art and Design, still at 15 as a freshman, I met other graffiti writers
Yeah.
and started doing it on subway trains. And then the
Mm.
excitement and thrills for that was just unbelievable. So the
Wow.
adrenaline rush and the excitement of seeing your train rolling by in the daytime, that kind of stuff, and the fame and the respect and the glory, and that's not even to mention above ground success as well.
Right.
Selling your paintings for loads of money, having a big bank account, and all that fun stuff.
Mm.
So it was exciting for reasons that are important to teenagers.
Yeah.
You get to be down with the cool kids. You get to
Mm.
be in the popular crowd. You get to go have kicks and
Wow.
giggles with your friends and adventures and excitement and
Mm.
all those things, whirlwind of activities. And by even at 16, and I saw my first painting for like $500, I was hooked. I was like, this easy stuff people want to give me loads of money for? Sure, I'll take their
Wow.
money. Let's ride this out, see how long it lasts and such. I mean,
Wow.
everything was just, day by day and having fun and excitement and meeting new people. I was hanging out with folks like Keith Haring and
Keep
John
Haring.
John
Wow.
Michel Basquiat, and going
Basquiat.
to a parties. I even met Andy Warhol at the age of 17.
Wow.
Had a conversation with him as well. So these life experiences were just absolutely priceless.
Wow.
So why wouldn't I want to become a graffiti writer? Plus all those boys telling me you can't do this because you're a girl, and I was a stubborn girl and a feminist at the
Mm.
age of where I didn't even know what a feminist was, but I was standing up for myself and not having it. No guy was going to tell me that I can't do that. And then when I did get to do it, and I was very tiny, not even 100 pounds, 5'2", really tiny, very sassy little girl, showed
Mm.
them that this is easy stuff, and all those big bad boys pretending that it's all hard and you got to be bold, butch and tough and all of that, and then this little girl shows you off.
Mm.
eh, you
Who?
know
Well. Okay. How it must have been really difficult being in the underground trying to paint because there's no light.
right, so you have
You
to
got to be
get
good
like
to do that.
acquire night vision, so your
Right.
eyes adapt. You learn how to paint in the dark. You're touching the
Mm.
paint. If it's sticky, then it's dry, and that's where you paint. And
Mm.
you just figure out ways. You don't take an outline because you can't be arrested with that. You don't
Mm.
want to be running and then you have to eat a piece of paper because that's the evidence,
Mm.
so don't even bring it. You have to have it memorized, know exactly what you're doing in the dark, do it quick, no nonsense, no fear. Even if your knees are shaking, you have to pretend that it's not
Wow.
any, that you're not afraid because you can't let the boy see you sweat.
Yeah, I can dig it. I mean, nobody wants to let people know that they're fearful or something, no matter what their agenda is. But I want to ask you, did you have any mentors that like?
Absolutely.
Who were
Yeah,
some of
yeah,
your mentors?
absolutely. Lots of other, I wouldn't have done it without the support of my own homeboys. So I had lots of different teachers, people who taught me style, taught me can control, taught me how to lift spray paint correctly so you don't get
Mm.
arrested, how to sneak into the train yards, how to move like a shadow, how to do characters, again, how to do more style. And lots of different people teach you lots of different things. And sometimes we teach master to apprentice, and sometimes the master might just be someone who is your very own age, but knows just a little bit more and will
Mm.
teach and hand down and so on. And this is how you learn. You can't just go stumbling into danger like that. You have to
Right.
be taught.
Wow. What was the mentality of the country in those times, the early on times, as far as writers back then? I mean, can you paint a picture? Because a lot of the youngsters they don't really know about the times that the struggle of the culture. I mean, it's a little better. It's no, actually, it's a lot better. When I'm always reminded of. I always see pictures of Koch holding this big this book with photos of trains with graffiti on it. Like they really wasn't really people really wasn't feeling the graffiti the writers back then, and it seemed like there was like a little battle between y'all were like outlaws to me. You're like they were like outlaws, and y'all weren't people didn't see the benefits of the culture early on. They didn't think that it was even art.
Well, no, certainly not. It is vandalism up to this day. If you write on somebody on something that don't belong to you, it's clearly vandalism. And no matter how pretty it could be, if you don't
Right.
have permission, then yeah, you could be arrested. But the people don't understand or remember New York City through the 1970s. It was broke. It was practically destroyed.
Right.
We were begging the federal government for money, and the president of the United States told us we can go fuck ourselves.
Right.
No money for New York City. So there was crime everywhere, people getting mugged, stuff was destroyed. We didn't have um, any kind of money. The Bronx looked like Hiroshima or
Mm-hmm.
Nagasaki when the nuclear bomb destroyed it.
Mm-hmm.
It was just vacant, destroyed building, and then one building standing up and everything destroyed, and then just one little building standing up on one block, and everything just rubble, literally rubble. And from these ashes was born graffiti, was born hip hop, was the creativity, the natural creativity that all people have
Right.
just came forth because there was no outlet. There wasn't, and folks didn't even have televisions or electricity in some parts of the Bronx and such. And
Yes.
from this, we just a grassroots invention of the visual art, of dance, of music. We just made it up. And this
Mm.
is one of the very few arts that America has originally created. One of
Mm.
the other few arts from way back when is jazz in the
Yes.
1920s. That is
Yes.
an original American creation that is
Right.
art that has enriched human culture. And now there is graffiti, there's street art, there's breakdancing, there's rap and MC, and all these wonderful um, talents just emerged spontaneously, and everyone feeding off each other's energy. Now, some of us didn't get to experience like rap music and breakdancing in our own neighborhood because we didn't live in that kind of neighborhood. We got to see the subway trains because they rolled through every single neighborhood in New York City.
Wow.
So even though it was painted in a different neighborhood, we got to see the artwork in our area.
Wow.
But some of us lived in kind of like white neighborhoods that didn't get to see or hear rap music or see the breakdancers at all
Right.
until it finally hit television and the media and such. So that wasn't an impact. But sure, there were crossovers. There were guys that did a little of this and a little of that and a little of this. So when you couldn't go do graffiti, you did a little dancing on the side or whatever. People were multi talented. Other folks were just single mindedly focused on their skill and their art, and they did it to the best of their ability, and nothing could intrude. Music wasn't important, dance wasn't important, but
Mm.
the art, that was all we ate and breathed. You wake, you sleep, you eat and breathe this stuff. It's just art, art, art all the
Mm.
time.
How did you
So
get your name?
this grew up out of the ashes of New York City.
Right. Can I just? How did you get your? Because I know people don't probably don't know. How did you get your name?
Um, while I was still writing my first boyfriend's name, which was kind of a boy name,
Mm.
and the first group of guys that I took up with in school. So my boy, seeing TC5, decided I should have a girl name and came up with the letters that looked good together and it said pink. And pink was as feminine as you can get. Most guys would not be willingly do that. They were very hip hop movement early on. It was very homophobic.
Yes. Right. Right.
So it was like, definitely, this
Still
is a
like
girl
that.
doing it. Since then, there weren't any other girls in New York doing it at the time, they figured they'll be the only group in the city with a girl, and might as well let's get fame off of that. So I got the name Pink because my boy said I should write that. I was like, okay, whatever. And I titled myself Lady because in school we were royalty. I was a queen since 16 in school. I would run the lunchroom like this. But I also used to read a lot of historical romances about the European nobility and the
Mm.
aristocracy and dukes and duchesses and lady
Wow.
this and lady that. It was just also exciting as a kid,
Wow.
that kind of stuff, to be royalty.
Wow. Were there any what? Dang, were there any other women out there doing it like you?
So before my time, and I am not the first lady of graffiti, there
Okay.
was a lot of girls through the 1970s, dozens and dozens of them, but they mostly did just tagging up. They didn't do big elaborate graffiti pieces in color. That takes a different kind of skill level and a lot of staying in the same spot for a long time to get it done. Tagging
Mm.
and tagging, you're always on the move. It's a little easier to do,
Mm.
but still there was a lot of girls that did this. Eva 62 and Barbara and Charming and Rocky 164 and there's lots of ladies before me and over the years I'd hardly ever met them, but they're starting to resurface now and I could
Mm.
probably I've met maybe almost a dozen of them and they're older than me and they're amazing and still strong ladies and all of that
Mm-hmm.
early teaching, the graffiti boot camp per se, gave us all a lot of confidence, gave us backbone and courage
Mm.
to tackle on the rest of our lives.
Question for you: will you ever get into some type of animation or something like that? With your art?
Animation requires doing a lot of computer stuff now. So
Oh
I do draw animation. I don't really work in the computer.
no, I
Everything
could
I
dig
do
it.
is pretty much hands on. I've got a
Mm.
couple of young people that help me out with stuff like that.
Mm.
With all my computer needs and such, they're there for that.
Mm.
So I'm not liable to be learning any computer programs to get the
I
stuff
dig
to
it.
actually move around. And if you mean animation like that,
Yeah.
I don't think so. I can visualize it and I can get others to do it for me.
Right.
So that is just about the same thing.
It sure is.
So whatever you don't have skills for, you have to learn to verbalize and describe and explain, and other
Mm-hmm.
people can skillfully create this for you. You
That is.
know, there's a lot in that. But I
Mm.
do draw animations and cartoons, and sometimes I've painted children's rooms, or I've done
Wow.
pilots for children's TV shows, or whatever the case may be, and I get to do kiddie stuff and cute and funny and childish,
Yeah.
and all the time I have to do such strong, sophisticated work and
Yeah.
powerful, and I don't often get to do cute and silly, but I can do that.
Um. Wow. How did you get? How did you become the star of Wildstyle? Like, how did you get involved with that movie? And were you
Um,
did you do any
uh-huh.
acting before that?
So the director of the movie Wildstyle, Charlie Ahern, and who is still a dear friend today, um, he was just another, white guy hanging out in the scene. So he spontaneously wrote this movie about things that he saw around him.
Mm.
He put in the rappers. He got to experience rap music. He got to meet the graffiti writers, and he wanted subway trains and such in there, absolutely. And then he met Lee and I, and so that there was a real love story happening. He put the love story in the movie. He
Wow.
saw that we were just emerging, coming out into the gallery world and such. So he put that storyline into the movie. The vandals come above ground and are meeting all this, wealthy, rich white people that we don't trust, and so on. He met. I brought my boys rock steady crew, the breakdancers, to
Mm.
Lee's surprise 21st birthday party.
Wow.
And Charlie Ahern was there, and he saw the breakdancers for the first time in his life, and he was like, God, they have to be in my movie, absolutely. So
Mm.
he wrote this movie around the culture that he was witnessing.
Wow.
So he included the folks that were willing to be in the movie in it. I agreed. It sounded like fun, but there was documentaries and books and traveling and concerts, and there was so much going on. It was difficult
Mm.
to take this seriously. So there was a camera crew and such following us around, and there was a suggested dialogue, but everyone was friends. We were all just chilling. Nobody took it seriously. No one imagined it would be a cult movie today. So,
Wow.
you know, we would just roll out of bed and go in with our street clothes. No makeup, no acting coaches, no nothing. We were just making
Wow.
stuff up as we went along. And everything was very real, very legit. You know, we rented a train yard in Queens, and they never did that again, but we got access to real trains in a real train yard and got to paint on that, and all of that was amazing. But all of
Mm.
that was just, again, a bunch of friends hanging out, everyone knowing each other, and he just wrote that in. And only the people
Wow.
were there were indispensable got paid. And Lee did not want to play the lead, so Charlie
Wow.
Ahern actually interviewed about 27 different actors, and nobody was appropriate for this role. And we had to twist Lee's arm, and since I was his girlfriend, I had to literally twist his arm and convince him to be the lead actor of this movie. But
Wow.
he didn't really want to do it. But it was kind of based on him.
Wow.
So
I've been watching this movie forever, and I didn't know that
um
story. I
yeah,
didn't
so
even
I
know that.
can't watch that movie because there's like this really long ass kiss I have with him in there. It's a real
Mm.
kiss, and no, it gives me nightmares, man. I can't even watch
Wow.
that movie.
I watch it like every a couple of months. I'll put on
Oh
Wild
my
Style. I love that
goodness.
movie. And
Yeah.
you know what? I was trying to wait because I got some Wild